Okay, here is second edition of the Eoin McKiernan Library Story Hour, hosted by virtual Celtic Junction Arts Center here in St. Paul, Minnesota. We're reading some Irish stories, and this one today is lovely. It is called The Prairie Train. It's a gorgeous story that is actually based on a real story where some Irish from Connemara came to live in the prairies, including Minnesota. This book is by Antoine of Flatharta. It's illustrated by Rohmann. I think that's very important. It's got a gorgeous inside cover. Really gives you a sense of the map and the world and the distance that people took to get where they went. And it's by Crown Publishers in New York. Once upon a time, there was a train that dreamed of being a boat. This was a time when trains were new and wonderful things, a time when trains blew clouds of steam, a time when train engines were shiny and extraordinary as rocket ships. Love the picture of the boat and its train mind. The train that dreamed of being a boat traveled through a vast, flat prairie in a land called the New World. Though in fact this world was very old, and people had lived there long before the shiny new train tracks were nailed into the ground. Now, the tracks stretched from sea to sea across the entire New World. It seemed to the prairie train that the tracks went on forever. On and on in one long, flat, straight line. The prairie train longed to be an old-fashioned boat with billowing sails, to take a journey that wasn't set by tracks. One day, a boy named Connor arrived at the city of Chicago with his mother and father. They had come from a place called Connemara, a place on the edge of a faraway island. They had sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to land in New York on the shores of America. Now they were about to start the final part of their journey on the prairie train. Before Connor left Connemara, his grandfather, who was a boat builder, carved him a toy boat so that Connor would always remember him and the old world he was leaving behind. Connor held the toy boat tightly in his hand and looked in wonder at the big train engine. It's a great view, the train engine, from a little boy's perspective. The train station was alive with people, all patiently waiting to board the prairie train. They came from faraway places with names like Krakow, Hull, Zagreb, Verona, Inverness, Kroneberg, and Connemara. The prairie train was waiting to carry them to new places, places with names like Omaha, Kansas, Cheyenne, San Francisco. You can see all the faces. Illustrations are beautiful. As the train left Chicago behind and headed toward the big flat prairies, Connor stared at a small wooden boat and thought about his grandfather. The voices of the grown-ups filled the train with sounds that Connor had never heard before. They talked in the languages of the old world. Connor listened to the voices as the prairie train traveled through towering grass that moved in the wind like gigantic green waves. The train came to a curve, and Connor put his head out the window to better see the engine. It looked so shiny and new. It looked so strong. It looked as if it could travel all the way around the world without stopping. Connor waved at the engine. Then, as Connor was waving, His grandfather's boat fell out of the window and disappeared into the towering, billowing grass. "Stop!" cried Connor. My boat is gone." "We can't stop the train, Connor," said his mother. "I'll make you another boat," said his father. "It wouldn't be the same," said Connor. "Please stop the train." His mother gently told him once again, "We can't stop the train." Other people in the carriage said in their different languages, "Can't stop the train, Connor. Can't stop the train." Soon even the sound of the train itself seemed to say it. "Can't stop the train. Can't stop the train. Can't stop the train." "I want to go home," Connor sobbed. The other passengers looked at Connor sadly. They knew how he felt. They tried to comfort him, but all Connor could think of was his wooden boat, now lost forever somewhere out on the great prairie. The prairie train wanted so much to comfort this sad little boy so far from home. It started to bounce and shake gently from side to side. Its wheels started to make a shushing sound. Shush, 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 shush. Sorry, I forgot the picture. Look at the boat. There goes the train. It was now late evening, and Connor's father told Connor to try to get some sleep. "When you wake up, you'll be nearer our new home," he told Connor. The prairie train continued to sing its lullaby. Shush, 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 shush. Soon Connor began to fall asleep, and he started to dream. He dreamed about his grandfather making boats by the sea in Connemara. Big boats, small boats, long and narrow boats, and toy boats. And then a strange thing happened. The prairie train entered Connor's dream. It wasn't on the prairie anymore. It wasn't traveling on straight lines of tracks. It was out in the middle of the ocean, free to move in any direction. Connor couldn't believe his eyes when he looked out the window. They were sailing on the sea. It was a moonlit night, and the train was riding on top of silvery waves. It was the greatest feeling in the world to be in this train, out in the middle of the sea. It was better than any boat that Connor had ever seen or been in. The prairie train moved faster and faster along the waves. Cut loose from its prairie tracks, it rocked and swayed along the wave tops. "So, this is what it's like to be a boat," it said. It sailed on and on toward a distant, craggy shoreline. See some mountains in the distance. Connor looked out at the waves. He looked up at the moon. It was so full and round it seemed near enough to touch. Connor could see the shore now, and on it, a man waving at him. The train rolled up and down with the waves, getting closer and closer to the shore. Soon, Connor was close enough to see that the man was his grandfather. "Hello, Connor," shouted the old man. "I lost the boat you made me," said Connor. "What harm?" shouted the old man. "But I miss it, and now I'm sad," said Connor. "There's bigger boats waiting for you," said the old man. "Where?" asked Connor. "In the city you're sailing to," said the old man. "It has boats and ships, carriages and trains. It's a beautiful city built on a bay. It's all waiting for you there, Connor." The train slowed down until it was almost at a standstill. The prairie train wanted to enjoy every second of this sea-sailing night. "See that moon?" said Connor's grandfather. "It's the same moon that's shining on all of us. Makes no difference if you're in Connemara or San Francisco. It's the same moon we're all looking up at. As Connor continued to stare at the moon, his sadness started to melt away. And all of a sudden, he began to feel a great urge to see this new city they were sailing to. The Prairie train felt this need as well now. It turned and headed out to sea. As they turned, the moon began to fade, and the sun began to rise. Right before his eyes, Connor could see the waves turning into a swaying sea of grass. They were back on the prairie. Early morning sunlight started to flood the carriage, waking the passengers. Everyone was glad to see Connor was feeling better. All he needed was a good rest, said Connor's mother. Connor looked out the window. He could see the engine up ahead, pulling the train steadily westward. As the morning sun climbed higher and higher in the sky, Connor and the Prairie train moved forward together. The end. It's a beautiful book about loss and movement. It actually caught me off guard when I read it the first time, so I thought it was a beautiful one to share. Thanks for joining us at our virtual story hour. Come back.